Hello everyone, welcome to another full set review. We're on Azurite C, and we're going to dive right in. We're going to start with the set order. We're going to go through Amber first, then move on down the line, and you're going to see here the little rating scale, which I've gone over briefly here in Twitch chat. If you ever want to check these out live, I usually do them as soon as the full set is sortable and filterable and online, so 1 star, 2 star, 3 star. 1 star is basically unplayable, don't play it in your deck. 2 star is fringe, maybe very niche, may fulfill a specific role. 3 is a moderately played card. You know, some things I'm going to eventually put out a primer on what cards kind of fill into those roles so you can kind of get an idea of power level. 4 is pretty much a staple. It goes into a lot of decks, really, really powerful effects. It has a lot of utility, and I expect to see a lot of play. 5s almost don't exist. 5s are the Mauis, the Mim Foxes, the Cinderella, the singer, the 1-cost singer. Like those are 5s. And they're format defining, they're deck defining, they're amazing cards. And we have a little bit unique symbol. I used to do kind of a blend of two things for halves, but we're gonna go through half rating here, where you add the half to whatever star it gives. So if it's in the middle, in between one of those ranking systems, you'll see it there. So that's how I'm gonna do these ratings. And let's get going right on to the first card. So Owl, Pirate Lookout. Storyborn ally pirate, which the pirate sub-theme is pretty interesting. Not too much support in this set. I would imagine that in a set or two we might get a full plethora of pirates to really make it a full kind of deck we build around and have pirates. There are some cards in this set that do let you utilize having a lot of pirates in your deck already, but they're not quite there on power level, I think. This card effect, I think, is more relegated to limited play, which has been touched on here or there. I'm not going to go over limited cards too much. I'm giving this one probably a 2.5. I'm going to use our half ratings right away. It's not amazing, but it can have utility. It can work with some of the Ruby cards that kill characters based off of, banish characters based off of strength. So being able to shrink something every time you play an ink or put something into your inkwell, whether you're playing Sapphire or anything like that, to put more than one thing to shrink more than once, could be great, but I think it's very fringe. Unless it really fits a specific type of deck, it does make challenging pretty impossible, and also does protect a little bit, but not something I expect to see too much play. But it is a pretty cool card. However, something I do expect to see a lot of play, Lilo, Escape Artist. So this card is very reminiscent and probably the first of its kind for this game of cards in other card games like Magic, where they recur themselves each turn. Icarid is a Magic card. It's a 3/1 that has the ability to attack immediately. That can return itself from the graveyard in that game to the battlefield and then attack right away. But this card isn't quite that. It doesn't have the ability to quest right away, of course, but it is one of the best cards at generating a very long game strategy against some of the Ruby decks that have really shown their worth. This is probably going to be one of the most played cards, if not the most played card from this set, I think. So we're starting off with a banger. I'm going to give this one a 4. I think it could be higher, 4.5. But certainly is one of the best cards in the set, I think. It's a hero for those who care about heroes, whether it be a Sapphire Amber aggressive deck that uses the heroes like Anna, the 1/4 from I think set 4 or set 5, or Philatides lets you play, every time you play a hero you get a lore. This is one to keep an eye on, and one of the ones I'm going to pick up, I know I'm going to have on day one, is Lilo, Escape Artist. It is an amazing card. My only kind of qualm with the card itself is that it doesn't work with Rockstar Stitch very well. Sure, it's a good cheap character to play when you play it for the first time. You get to exert it to draw a card with Rockstar Stitch, but you don't get it to use this ability to draw when you return it from your discard to play. There are some cards in this set that kind of put cards from the top of your deck into your discard, which are fine, which can kind of fuel this one if you randomly hit it off of it, but not really something I'm looking forward to doing. More so just looking to play this out. Then if it dies or later in the game you have nothing else to do, you just get to bring it back for 2 ink. And it is important to note, you bring it back after you've readied for your turn, but before you draw. So you do have to make the decision before you draw for the turn, which can be a decision to make. You may have 6 ink in play and have this in your discard, want to bring it back, but then if you draw something that costs 5 or 6, can't play it. There is a decision to be made, but it's still a wildly powerful effect for what it is. And again, I expect this to be one of the most played cards in the set for constructed play, and I'm looking to play it into a lot of decks right away. But let's move on here, going down the line. Who doesn't love Winnie the Pooh? Winnie the Pooh, Honey Pirate, another pirate. So support on an uninkable 2/2, not exactly what I'd like to see uninkable support 2/2. Support hasn't really been a very strong mechanic in this game yet. Support on Amber cards is pretty important because it can buff characters that your opponents have for cards like World's Greatest Criminal Mind. We see the Queen from set 2 that has a similar type of effect where support, it doesn't really support, but it kind of supports. Where you can make use of cards like World's Greatest Criminal Mind that way, but the ability to cost reduce a pirate. There aren't too many 4-cost pirates that I really want to pair with this. There are a few, which I think probably the next card on the list is going to be one. But it's a solid card, again, if pirates become a big part of the set and you're able to protect this card with bodyguards. Certainly could see play. I'm not looking forward to playing this too much, though. It is uninkable, so I'm going to give it a 2. If it was inkable, certainly could see it. But as an uninkable card, I think the cost is too high to put it into your deck. Next up here, Gopher, Ship's Carpenter. Well, I mean, the stat line is, I think, something we've seen before. Nothing really exciting. I'm going to move right along from this one. I wouldn't play this card unless you really needed to. This is getting the, I forgot the half existed, the 1.5. Not something I really want to do. It may be served for purpose, but it's not really something I'm thrilled about. It's a fine card. It's not great. But yeah, nothing to say there. Next up, we have Simba, Happy-Go-Lucky. This is obviously, of course, before the stampeding wildebeest, or whatever they are. Stampeding, is it wildebeest? I think it's wildebeest. But yeah, this one, 1/4 for 2. Not really anything we've been thrilled about, as you can compare this easily to Ursula Vanessa. And that thing is essentially the same body, but Singer 4, which is an incredible ability, of course. This one here, you really need the card type to matter, both hero, prince, and it being a Simba, which there are some shift targets which we can get to. There's some, cards like Pride Lands, which could just want the fact that you want more Simbas. I've played the Pride Lands aggro deck in one of the set championships. It may have wanted a copy of 2 of this, so it's really pigeonholed, I think, to the type of deck that really wants these card types. I'm giving it a 2 for that reason. Otherwise, most of the time, 1/4s for 2 are irrelevant. They're 1s. They're not playable, but this having some good, names, Simba, and card types is giving it a little bit more grace there. So not something I'd really, I'm excited about, but it's something to note. Next up, we have Chip, Friend Indeed. When you play this character, chosen character gets +1 lore this turn. Similar to the Donald Duck we saw in, I think, set 4, the one that's a 2/3 with Bodyguard with this ability. So you lose you gain a point of strength, but you lose Bodyguard. This is fine. Again, a 2, not really great. It's a role player. It could be put in some decks, but not too many. Some of the hyper-aggressive decks really want the Bodyguard, actually, to protect their 1-cost cards against maybe a Mim Fox. While this doesn't get eaten by a Mim Fox, you often don't care that your character gets eaten. You just want to protect the ones that have more lore that are cheaper. So 2, as a role player, I don't really see it being great. Maybe some synergies with Dale make it a little bit more playable, but nothing to write home about here. Gonna move right along. Now here we go, Dale. The opposite to Chip. If you have a Chip in play, this is unexerted when you play it. So we saw a 3-cost 3/4 Moana from the previous set that was uninkable and had the same kind of stat line with the same amount of lore. That one seemed fringe playable. Entering exerted is a big downside. However, one of the cards we've seen enter exerted so far that's seen some play is Sleepy, being a 2/3 for 2, which into a Mim Fox was one of its always biggest downsides, and that was always getting eaten by a Mim Fox. This one doesn't get eaten by Mim Fox, it trades, so this one's actually a bit better. I don't think that it's really enough to be exciting or game-breaking, but it is a card I think will see some play. I'm giving it a solid 3. It actually has a stat line where if it doesn't die to cards like the Storm Rage on, and if it also was able to at least trade with a Mim Fox, the exerted part might not be that big of a downside. It's not great, but it's going to be fine enough. I like the card. I'm looking forward to trying it in some decks. Just again, devoid of any of the chip synergies. It's still fine. It's just a reasonable body and a reasonable amount of lore. 4 willpower is nothing to scoff at. Sure, Medusa, but that's 3 to 4 turns when you play this. So I go right along this one. Not a bad card. But moving along here to David. David, Impressive Surfer, 3/3. When you have a character named Nani in play, gets 2 lore. So I think the only Nanis that exist in the game are ones that cost 5, meaning that this character doesn't do anything for a full turn after you play it, other than be a 3/3. It can have some more lore, but I think we've seen enough of this effect where it's not too amazing. It's just a reasonable card. I'm going to give it a 2. If there's a dedicated deck and maybe a card like Nani becomes a lower cost Nani, maybe a 2 or a 3 that you can curve into this, even a 4 that has some reasonable amount of reason to play it, it could be fine. But for now, I think we're a bit far away from this card being too great. Fine card for limited, I'm sure, but nothing exciting here. Again, going to move on to the next one. Prince Naveen, not nearly as impressive as his previous iteration, where I thought it was probably one of the best cards in the set, probably the second best after Pete in hindsight. Shifting 3, there is a 2-cost 2/3 Naveen in this set, and Bodyguard. It's actually very close, if you think about it, to a Robin Hood Champion of Sherwood, a 5-cost 2/6 versus 5-cost 3/6. Yeah, that's a bit of a difference. That 1 power is big. Dying to Brawl is a big difference there. Being shrunk by 1 ice block and get Sea Suit is another break point. But in all honesty, Bodyguard's a very relevant ability, and this has come down very early to where you're able to protect some things. The only issue with that is that you don't have a 1-cost Naveen to be able to play a 1-cost into 2 more 1-costs and then shift to protect. You get to do that after the fact, not really immediately here. The Bodyguard effect can be relevant. Again, we've seen cards that it's a 5-cost Nani, I think was in one of the Steel Song decks. That was just a 3/6 that had Bodyguard. It made some waves in one of the DLCs, but this one really kind of in the middle ground. I'll give it a 2.5. It does have a potential to be playable. I wouldn't really look at it to shift on the 4-cost Naveen. We really want a 1-cost Naveen for this to be really impressive. So we'll see. But moving along for this one, again, the Naveens keep coming. Carefree Explorer 2/3. Fine, nothing to write home. Again, I'm going to give this a 1.5. It's the stat line really needs the character to matter, and it doesn't right now. The Bodyguard is not quite enough for me to care too much, but I'm going to go on to the Chief Bogo here. Chief Bogo. Well, you have a character named Gazelle in play. The character gains Singer 6. So we have a 4-cost, 4/4, Singer 6 potentially. There are 2 Gazelles, I believe. One is already a Singer 5, so having another Singer on top of it might be a little bit redundant. But there is another Gazelle, I believe, in the set that grants Evasive and Emerald. This could make this card do something relevant where you play this in a deck that wants to play cards like Under the Sea. Getting Singer 6 on a reasonable body is nothing, to scoff at. It certainly has potential there, but I think it's much more relegated to a draft type deck. I'm giving this a 1.5. The body's fine. Not something I'm excited to try out or play, but it's a cool card. I like it. I like that he's idolizing Gazelle there. So. All right, Chip. So Ranger Leader. I don't know why I said Wrangler. While you have a character named Downplay, gets support. This has been on cards, I believe, with support without having any conditions. This is kind of just fodder at this point. It's getting a 1.5 for limited, but not something I'm thrilled with here. Just kind of going to move on with that. All right. Monterey Jack, everyone's favorite type of cheese, of course. Not really mine, but it's fine. The only thing I like more than cheese is nothing. All right, fair enough. This card is medium. There are better cards at the stat line to play with relevant text, where this one's just kind of very similar to a location, like a 4-cost 1/7 location with no ability, close to a McDuck banner. Doesn't quite gain the lore the same way. It can be attacked almost as easy, easier to kill too. Not something I'm thrilled about playing. 1.5 for potential. The willpower matters. I think there's nothing else with this much willpower at this cost in the game, so maybe. But for now, I'm going to get this out of here and just get on to some more important cards, some more entertaining cards, let's say. So Chip and Dale. So during a turn, whenever a card is put in your ink, you can return a character from your discard. So I've been off and on about this one. It is up and down how I feel. It is either reasonable or unplayable, and I'm not certain which one to really put this one in. It's kind of in the middle there. We went through a couple cards. The one of the Chippendales, I don't remember which one exactly. The one we just saw, those the 3/4, is reasonable to play on its own right, and this card shipped on top of it. The ability to recursively return characters from your discard to your hand is pretty powerful. I'm not going to lie. It even fuels itself. You can just keep inking a card, getting an inkable back, keep doing that. So you essentially have infinite ink if you really felt like it. That is something to note with a card like Belle in an Amber kind of Sapphire deck where you can just play multiple ink. You can keep playing cards out of your ink wall for ink and then have a ton of ink and keep going. So it's fine there. It also is pretty important to note that there are other cards to shift on top of. Morph is one of them, so maybe in a deck where you have Morph and similar shift targets, maybe the Simba, which we'll get to, totally reasonable to do. I'm giving this one a 3. I'm tentative about this card. 8 cost, I think, is a bit unreasonable. I really want to be shifting this and then shifting it on turn 6. Or one way to look at it is that if you play a Morph on turn 2, a Gaston, the one that's the 2/4 that reduces the cost by 2 on turn 3, Then you can shift this and then play an ink afterwards, because you'll have up to 6 ink worth of play that turn. Granted, there's nothing going to be really in your discard at that point because it's turn 4, but you can see where I'm going with that, making a big body pretty quick. It does quest for 3, so it's hard to kind of disregard the fact that it can quest and get ahead really fast, but also it's a large body. 6/6 is nothing to scoff at. 6/7 is probably the perfect stat line for cards. 7/7 obviously is just giant, but anything that survives Maui is okay in my book. This one being one short, a little unfortunate, but totally fine. It doesn't get by any of the ruby removal except for the pointed kind of unconditional removal, but it's a fine card. I think it's a 3. I think this is, of all the ones that we see where it's the shift on top of characters that do things when you ink them, this might be the best one, the ones that are shiftable. But yeah, I'm excited to at least try it. On what? I'm not sure. There's only one more Chip and or Dale card, which we'll get to here in just a little bit, which I think could see play. But moving along down the card list order here, Judy Hopps. Support. So 6 cost, 3/6. Yikes. We all know how 6 cost characters with 3 power go, which I don't really want to get into too much. But at the end of your turn, you may ready another chosen character. So it can support something and then protect it by readying it. Cute. Not really ideal. This is not really going to see much play. I can't imagine a world where this exists and we're thrilled by it. This is getting a 1.5 or potentially maybe some random deck that wants to ready stuff. Maybe the Ruby, Amber, Wreck-It Ralph, Christopher Robin, untap kind of style thing, but I'm not thrilled, to say the least. All right, moving along, a legendary, Tiana. Special reservation when a character of yours is challenged while this character is exerted. That line of text always kills me. The challenging character gets -3 strength unless their controller plays 3 ink. So it's kind of like if you're familiar with any kind of magic cards, a ghostly person. It's a thing that costs 3 that to attack your opponent has to pay 3 ink per thing that attacks. Similar effect. This not having an immediate impact, meaning it doesn't get the ability to do so and kind of throw off your opponent's game plan right away by having the ability to bodyguard or anything like that, is a little bit worse, but it does make challenging pretty awkward. It makes it so that a Maui coming down can't actually kill this. It makes it so it's like 3 strength, so it can kind of quest into a Maui turn, which is really impressive, actually. They can kill it with a Maui and a Mim Fox, if that's what they have in play, a Fox already, and then play a Maui. They can just let them both be shrunk by 3, and this will die to that. It does count for anything, including itself. It's not just this character, so it is pretty good at defending an aggressive board state. I'm not certain how much room there is for uninkables, but I'm certainly going to try this in decks that are very aggressive. The Amber Amethyst Hyper Aggressive deck is one way to take this. It is just a fine card. I'm not really looking to put this in my decks. I think it will be good to some degree. It's not something to write home about. It's not an amazing all-star or 4 of. It's like a 2 or 3 of probably, I think, kind of where the other Tiana fell, where the one that had to resist, and if it was exerted, you got to do things. This one doesn't have additional clauses where you have to have no cards in the hand. It's kind of just if it's exerted, which is good. But yeah, it definitely could see play. I'm giving it a 3.5. I think there's a world where this is pretty powerful. 4 health is quite a bit. I think anything above 3 health is a really big stat line increase. The obviously strength being small means it's not going to survive much as far as Ruby removal goes, but 4 health is a problematic number for a lot of the steel decks to deal with. It's not, Tink Swordsable. It has to be Storm plus something. It has to be Strength plus something else to where 4 characters in play, which if that's going on, you're probably losing anyway against a steel deck. But being able to protect against any of the rushers that Amethyst tends to play is a pretty big deal. And getting to soak out 3 ink of theirs is kind of what you invested in to begin with. So I think it's fine. I'm not going out of my way to buy this card or play it in a bunch of decks immediately, but I think it will eventually crop into some decks and find some kind of value there. But moving along, Crowned Councilwoman, Federation Leader. So whenever this character quests, your other alien characters get +1 lore. I think I've done a once-over on all the aliens that exist in the set. I don't think it's quite enough in the game to exist for this to be amazing. I think eventually this will, if we get more cards like Stitch and more aliens from other worlds, depending on where we go to, sure. It is a solid card. I'm giving it a 2.5. Any alien deck's going to play for this card very easily. Outside of that, no. There's I don't think enough aliens in the game yet to make this card amazing. But again, not to say that there won't be. It just not yet. But something to keep an eye on for sure. And with every set, kind of reassess this kind of card to see if we are at the critical mass yet. But fine card. We've seen effects like this on much higher cost characters like Tiana, which cares about heroes. It costs double the amount of ink to play this with only a +1/+1 stat line. But yeah, for sure. Could be played. We'll see how it goes. Dale. All right, Dale. So this is the other one out of the Chip and Dale kind of pair there that I think is playable. When you play this character, you can put the top 3 cards of your deck into your discard, which is the first time I think we've done that on play, to shrink something by 3 strength till the start of your next turn. Pretty big effect. One of the cards that immediately jumps to mind is Chernobog, the 10 cost uninkable from set 3 that is a 9/9 cost reduced for each character in your discard. For sure. Definitely can be, an amazing card to get cheapened by this effect, and also to kind of push your board forward by making it so that their character in play can't challenge as well, or you can team up with some smaller characters to then challenge something that's bigger that you would have to otherwise trade into. This card's fine. I think this card's reasonable. I don't really want to give it quite a 3, but I think it's about a 3. I think it's 2.5, 3 in that range. Maybe you have to come up with the 0.75 rating, or quarter, and divide the quarter rankings up, but I think it's almost a 3. If it had 2 lore, I'd be over the moon about this card, but it only has 1 lore, making it a little bit too much playing with your food, not winning the game type deal. It can be very impactful. I'm sure in any kind of limited environment, it's going to be great as well, allowing for awesome trades to happen in your favor. And it is until the start of your next turn, so again, it can just protect a lead against like a Robin Hood champion of Sherwood. It can just shrink that so they can't challenge in. All these things. I think it's a solid card. Again, I think primarily it's be played in Mufasa decks, or again, decks trying to make use of that Chip and Dale shift that I talked about. This kind of fuels that card as is without having to have things die already. You kind of get to draw whatever you discarded, which could be good. But I think this one's fine. This is one of the more reasonable middling threats that I could see seeing play. But yeah. Moving along here, Nani. Caring Sister, support, 3/5. So pay 2 to have chosen character get -1 strength till the start of your next turn. This is expensive. Sure, it turns on Jacob in more ways than one, but it's a bit expensive for what you're doing here. Sure, it's repeatable, and sure you can use it that way. And I'm going to give it a 2. Maybe there's a weird world where this is okay and synergies enough with other things to, I got nothing. This one's 2, 1.5. I'm off it. I'm not spending time on this one. It's just too much. It's asking too much of me to really care. Maybe if it was a 4/4 or something. I don't know. Speaking of 4/4s, however, we have Simba, Pride Protector. This one's an interesting one. Simba. So we have a bunch of shift targets for Simba. We saw the 1/4. We know that in previous sets we have the 1 cost Simba that draws and discards from set 1. We have the Bodyguard Simba, which was one of the best cards in set 1. There's been a few more along the way that are relatively cheap, but not quite as effective as those. This one has a very unique ability. At the end of your turn, if this is exerted, you may ready your other characters. So it doesn't work in tandem with itself, meaning if you have 2 of these, you don't get to ready both of them. You get to ready one or the other, depending which one you choose to use first, because the other one won't be readied. This card's fine. It's uninkable, sure. It goes, I think, into any type of really aggressive deck that wants to maybe use Pride Lands. Pride Lands is something I've been experimenting with back and forward. That deck does have only so many uninkables I can play, and if you're using a whole new world, that kind of changes how much you can do for each of that. But we'll see. We'll see how it goes overall. But I think this card will see some play. I'm giving it a 3.5 here. It's a fine card, but it's not something I'm certain I know where it's going to go. It's just going to be a fine card for the most part, for most of its existence. So we'll see how it kind of plays out. But yeah, I think it could see play. Very aggressive decks. Where'd it go? Very aggressive decks will make use of this card pretty well. Combining with Stitch Rockstar, it'll ready all the characters. You can kind of end your whole chain of dumping out things with Pride Lands with this being shifted for 2 if you have it one on the Pride Lands already, and everything that you put into play off the Rockstar can be readied. Not that your opponent can usually kill all of them, but just another way to protect all of them. Solid card, but 3.5. Could be played. Could be good. Moving along here, Kenga, Nurturing Mother. Another character request. Another chosen character can't be challenged. This is a 2. Protecting a character is cool. I love the theme, love it's on theme, but I'm not excited by this card. Gonna move along. Not really something I'm gonna spend too much time on. Same thing with this one, Rabbit. Moving a damage around is not ideal. It is just, I think we saw this in set 1. Is it Hey that did this in set 1? I don't know. Not excited by this one. Moving on for the next card here. Rue, a pirate. When you play this character, you give something -2 strength till start of your next turn. Fine card. Giving it a 2. Pretty good and limited, I'm sure. Could see play depending on if critical mass of pirates is needed to make a certain deck type work. And its stat line's not great, but shrinking something can make something survive for a full turn, and that can be good. But not thrilled with it overall. All right, Mr. Litwack. This is from Wreck-It Ralph. Yes. During your turn, whenever you play another character, you may ready this character. He can't quest or challenge. It's pretty hard to kill. So what you want to do with this card here, it feels like, is use it to sing a lot of 3-cost songs for free, essentially. Every time you play a character, you get to ready it, sing another song. Play a character, ready it, sing another song. Sure. The stat line's pretty bad. I imagine you quest with it, play a character, sing something with it. The sequencing on that might be difficult because you might be singing a card like the Storm Rage on. Maybe with friends on the other side, you want to do something like this. Makes friends really, really cheap, functionally. Yeah, I think it's okay. I'm going to give it a 2. Maybe it finds a unique home, but I'm going to move on. Next up here, Jim Hawkins, Honorable Pirate. I'm really kind of confused by the pirates being in amber. They were really ruby and steel, and then they pushed them to amber. I guess, sure. Again, if you need a critical mass of pirates, this card, this is the card that asks for the critical mass. I think you still are best shape to be pairing this with steel. It's fine, right? You look at the top 4 cards, and let's just assume your entire deck is pirates, and you have no misses. Sure, 7 costs 4/7, draw 4 cards. Pretty great. Yeah, in that context, sure, it's a 3.5. Similar to Stitch, Surfer Stitch. Very similar in a lot of ways. Bodyguard could be relevant. I don't really know why it needs Bodyguard. It seems a little odd to have that as an ability. I would imagine support would make more sense. As a captain, you kind of support your crew. But yeah, it seems fine. I do think that in a dedicated pirate deck, if we ever get to that point where you're playing 52 or more pirates and this card, and you're having a reasonable time doing so, not having too many, non-functional games, like sometimes the all-character Mufasa-based decks are a little bit difficult to kind of combat the early board states and kind of fall too far behind, where even a card advantage engine like this late in the game won't do much. This is good against the card, be prepared, stuff like that. But solid card. It is inkable, so you can't really be too unhappy if you have ink problems. Just ink it. If you need to play something and draw a bunch of cards, this could be great. But I really would want to see minimum 48, 52 pirates in your deck to make this good. I want to draw 4 cards, or I want to at least draw 3 cards every time. 4 would be preferable. Yeah, I'm going to skip the little menace over here just to keep things honest. So we go from set number 25 to set number 27 here. Good job. Yes, good job indeed. Chosen character gets +1 lore. This card's not great. 1 star. There's plenty of cards that do this, but better. We saw the Chippendale, one of those 2 cards. I don't remember which one it was. Do this as a 3/3 body. Probably be more impactful than this thing. I saw people on the internet talking about having a bunch of this card to give out after hearing a bad beat story. Sounds like a better use of this card than playing it. So, moving on. I won't give in. Interesting. So, return a character with 2 or less from your discard to your hand. There aren't too many amazing cards to return to your hand. The only one that I really want to return in the game, I think, so far, would be Doc. The other card may be Ursula Deceiver. The one that takes songs. Those are any cards I can really see wanting to recur with this. Aside from that, there aren't really many other things that really even fall into the category of high-powered 2-cost cards that are worth even returning. If it returned it to play, that would be a very different story. We could see this in a lot more decks, I think, if it was turned to play. Obviously, a little bit more powerful if it did that. You can functionally do that by singing this, is I guess the idea. But yeah, I don't think this is quite good enough, and if it was power 2 or less or something like that, it'd be very restrictive on what they could make of the next few years. But fine card. I think it could find a home. The fact that it can't return, of course, like Ariel, like I said, with it being power versus it not being power versus cost, means it's not ideal. But maybe in a dock deck that wants songs too. But it's hard to find a deck that wants dock and songs and not Whole New World, which is where that would fit. But even in Steel Song, this is not something I'm thrilled to put into the deck. I like that. Rescue Rangers. I'm not going to say anything. It's bad. Don't play it. 1 star. Unfortunate, but whatever. Chosen characters can't be challenged at the start of your next turn, so it's kind of like Rue's ability. Or is it Rue? The card we just looked at is not Rue. Kenga. Kenga's ability on an action. Requires a little bit less setup. Can be functionally looked at as ready a chosen character, which is not really worth it. Giving this a 1, I don't see it being played. Very similar to just ready the chosen character because it can't be challenged if it's readied. So I'm gonna move on from this one being poor. Naveen's ukulele. This one's interesting. I think it's odd because the deck I want to play this in the most is Sapphire, so I can make use of this item with Hiram, so I don't always have a dead card. But there's no really good 7 cost songs in Sapphire and Amber to pair it with. Look at This Family isn't really what I would want to be doing. The reason I say 7 is because, again, pairing it with Hiram, meaning that I'd also potentially want to use it on Hiram, giving me 4 plus 3, which is 7. But it could be good eventually. For right now, it's getting a 1, maybe 1.5 for potential playable, but I'm going to avoid this card like the plague for now. Being able to sing cards like Be Prepared off of a 4 cost isn't really what I'm looking for either. So moving along, kind of cleaning up the end of this here. Return a pirate character from your discard to your hand. Pooh's Pirate Ship. We've seen cards like this, the ones that return things with support. It is pretty good at grinding a very long game. However, this card is going to fall by the wayside, I think, and I'm going to give it a 1.5. Maybe in the pirate deck you play this, but I doubt it. The card Lilo, the second card on this list that we already went through, is just a much better card that's actually a card in play, as threatening 2 lore at all times and can bring back by itself. So I would look less to playing cards like this and more just copies of Lilo, even in a pirate deck. But yes, Scrum. Exert one of your characters. Chosen character gets -2 strength to the start of your next turn. I don't think this is very good. Maybe in a deck where you want to shrink things and then mounts them with the muses or something. But I'm out of here. I don't even know if can you do this multiple times, I guess? Because it doesn't exert this. You just exert one of your characters. This is a weird card. Maybe 1.5 because I misread that part where you get to just essentially exert as many things as you want to shrink something by 2. Maybe. Yeah, because it's not. You don't have to exert this card. You exert one of your characters. So maybe, but I doubt it. Yeah, Amber's not really great at challenging things, which is what this is trying to get you to do most likely. But yeah, a couple more cards here, which we're going to have to deal with sideways. During your opponent's turn, whenever a character is banished while here, gain 1 lore. This has no passive lore. 1 cost 1 to move, 5 to use. This either is amazing or does nothing. I'm going to give it a 2. It's pretty good anti-Be Prepared tech. You play it the turn before they have to be prepared. And they can't challenge into this. They can't, they don't have a Maui or something like that in play or something with 5 strength, so they can't kill it and then be prepared. Maybe this is okay. Giving this actually already a 2. It's fine, rating 2. It's potentially great, most likely not great. It really would depend on how it's situated in the right. It has to go into the right deck. But yes, sideways it is for locations for the set review. And on to our last card here. One I think that was a better before the translation came through. So it's 2 cost, uninkable, no passive lore, 6 to move here and 7 willpower. Whenever you move a character here from a location, you may banish this location to gain 3 lore and draw 3 cards. Previously, the translation said you may banish that location, I believe, meaning whichever location it came from, meaning you could use this ability multiple times with multiple different locations, then moving these over. That's when I thought it was actually pretty good, letting you essentially throw away other locations while this one being something in play that they kind of have to respect with 7 willpower to then be reused and gain a bunch of lore that way. That seemed way better, obviously. But this one, I think, might be a little bit too expensive for what it does. If it was inkable, maybe. Obviously, that's the case with most uninkable cards. Gave this a 2, maybe a potential build around, but not really anything I'm super excited about playing. But quick recap here again, 2 for this one. The best Amber card in the set, I'm going to go through them here really quick. Just number 1 is clearly Lilo Escape Artist. We give it a 4. Solid card, going to go in a ton of decks. I think it's going to be one of my most put in decks card from day one. And yeah, that's just number 1. I think number 2 maybe is going to be either Tiana or the Simba Legendary. I'm not sure where those will quite fit, but they could be great. But this is definitely number 1, best Amber card in the set, getting a solid 4. Going over that again here. But thanks again here. Again, doing the set review here on Twitch, but also for YouTube here. If anyone's watching that at a later point, check out in the next video. We'll see you back here in just a minute.